point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell, who is invisible.
This is number 507, by the way.
That's number 507, and we're recording it on the 26th of January. Tom is not in the studio.
On January 19th.
Oh, I'm sorry. We are
recording
it on the 26th. It's the news starts on January 19th.
Bingo.
There you go.
There you go.
We get it right sooner or later. If we talk enough, we will always get it right. We just have to say as many things as we possibly can. Something will be right sooner or later. Okay, before
this is Tom Fennell, as you know. I'm in the flesh, but I'm not in the studio.
That's right.
So I'm relaxing at home. and I'm connecting my telephone.
Okay, I have to.
Going on, so.
Yep, I have to start with a couple of announcements. One of which is we're still looking for donations, not for us, but for BCTV, because BCTV needs more money than it's got, and Tom and I, of course, are flush as all get out.
And BCTV is quite a community asset.
It's a community asset. There's no question about that. And it has suffered a little bit at the hands of a former president of the United States or his administration or something that happened while he was in office. I don't know what it was.
I won't bother to ask you who that might have been.
Oh, I don't even remember. I don't remember. So things are forgettable. Anyway, we are trying to get donations. They don't come to Tom or me. Tom and I are not paid for this. I don't get paid for my blog either. I do take donations at the blog, but they don't cover the costs really. I don't press that, but I do press for the donations for BCTV because they really are necessary.
Come on, you're fooling everybody. We're really getting rich off of this.
Oh yeah, we're getting rich off of it. That's why we've done it 507 times.
Really, we're doing a good deed.
We are doing a good deed. We're hoping for treasures when we get to the promised land. If you go to BrattleBoroTV.org, you can make a donation there, and when you make a donation, please leave a note saying that it is being given to support Energy Week. And Energy Week is recorded based on items that appear at my blog, geoharvey.com. You can go to geoharvey.com, click on the calendar, and find the thing that we're talking about, or you can go to the website that Tom and I used to develop this and find articles there. It's a little easier. It's a little easier to do that. Wouldn't you say, Tom?
Well, I don't know. I don't try the other way, so I haven't compared the two.
Well, you always go to the website that I leave things at.
Exactly.
Okay.
That works fine.
It works fine. Yeah. Okay. Let's start. What do you think?
We got a picture. We start here with a picture of a village in Greenland.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to even try to pronounce the name, but you've been practicing.
I've been practicing, and I will get it slightly wrong, but it's called Itakorturmit. And that means big house people.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's why they can remember how to say it. They know how to say that. Anyway, this article is from CNN.
And there's a link there on your blog to CNN if someone needs to go to it.
Yep. What do you got for a title?
Read the headline, and I quote, "Temperatures on Greenland have been this warm in at least 1,000 years."
After years of research on Greenland ice sheet, scientists reported in the journal Nature that temperatures there have been the warmest in at least 1,000 years, which is the limit for the time they can analyze by examining ice cores.
So it could be much longer than 1,000
It could be much longer than 1,000 years. It could be 10,000 years for all we know. But the ice cores, the deepest they can go and analyze is 1,000 years back. And of course, what they're doing is they're drilling into the ice using a special drill that takes the core out, and they can examine the core and
examine the core, exactly, layer by layer.
It's kind of like looking at a slice of wood. In fact, they do things like this with trees. If they want to find out how old the tree is, they can do a core going into the tree, which is the least damaging way to do it.
Beats cut the tree down.
It beats cutting the tree down, that's right. If you've got a 5,000-year-old tree, you don't want to cut it down. There are trees you can't do that with. I used to live in Devon, and the church that we went to had a yew tree next to it, and nobody knows how old that yew tree is because...
That's Y-E-W, right?
Huh?
That's Y-E-W.
Y-E-W, that's right. And yew trees rot on the inside. They're kind of like apple trees and things like that, where they rot in the core. But in yew trees, they don't split apart the way apple trees do, so they last a very long time. But you can't take a sample from inside. The church was built where it was because of the beautiful yew tree that yeomen could use to make bows, or bows could be made from the wood for a yeoman. Then they would take branches off the tree for that. And the church was built, I think, in the middle of the 13th century. So the tree had to have...
Something's happening. You're breaking up.
I'm breaking up. So we'll go on to our next piece.
The one with a couple of airplanes on it.
There's two airplanes, neither of which has ever been built. Okay, what do you have for a title?
New aircraft design from NASA and Boeing could benefit passengers in the 2030s.
Yeah, NASA and Boeing will work together on sustainable flight demonstrator project to build, test, and fly emissions-reducing single-aisle aircraft this decade, NASA announced. The first test flight of this experimental aircraft is set to take place in 2028, which
So
means...
it looks like they're making the planes thinner.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's single aisle.
Yeah.
So they are smaller aircraft. The only thing about this is that people should understand that getting an aircraft that can be flown as an experimental flight in 2028 does not mean that that aircraft is going to be useful for addressing climate change, because we have to address it faster than this could come into being. Okay, should we go on?
Burning things.
What's that?
We got to stop burning things.
We have to stop burning things quicker than that. Okay, we have an item here. There we go. We have a picture of a Proterra factory. This article comes from Clean Technica.
And that's in America. That's in South Carolina, where you can see the American flag in the back of the picture.
You can indeed, although some people around the world are a little sneaky and they can put up an American flag even though they're not in America. But what do you have for a title?
U.S. races ahead in EV manufacturing investments.
Yes, the U.S. is poised to attract the most investments globally in EV and battery manufacturing for the first time, surpassing announced investments in China and closing in on Europe. Companies have announced $210 billion worth of investments in the EV industry, up from just over $50 billion in 2021. So
that's a significant increase.
Oh, this is really kind of mind-boggling. They've gone from $50 billion in 2021 to $210 billion in 2023. That's a lot of growth. That's doubling every year. Why did that happen?
Four times. I was just going to say 4 times. So
Yeah.
doubling and doubling again.
Yeah, it happened because of the Inflation Reduction Act. All kinds of businesses are investing all kinds of money in the United States because of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
No doubt about this. This is the way it's happened.
About it.
What?
No question about it.
No question. I will tell you, the Europeans are not happy about this. They want to have more money invested in Europe, and they're really unhappy that the United States is going to get a bigger share than they're getting. But you know, I don't think we should be in competition. We should both be trying as hard as we can to.
Well, we got China to deal with.
We got stuff to deal with. Okay, we're up to Friday, January 20th, and we have a picture of a place. And
Nairobi.
it's Nairobi. Isn't that amazing? And
Yeah.
I would say you can tell by the palm.
expect to see something like that in Nairobi.
Well, every place all over the world, they don't look like they did when we were kids.
No, that's for sure.
I mean, I think of China as a place, and I've said this before, where people wear conical hats as they plant rice out in a paddy. That's the picture of China that I was getting when I was a kid.
Really?
China is places like Shanghai and Beijing and Shenzhen, and you know, there's huge cities with big buildings, and it just doesn't. And people are buying
And a
cars.
lot of technology.
What?
A lot of
A
technology.
lot of technology. This is from myjoyonline.com. Read the title for this, Tom, okay?
New Africa Renewable Energy Initiative to unleash 1.2 terawatts.
What's a terawatt, Tom?
It's a gigawatt.
It's a gigawatt. 1.2 terawatts is 1,200 gigawatts. And what's a big gigawatt?
What's a gigawatt?
What's a bigawatt? I think a terawatt should be a big gigawatt, a big gigawatt. Okay. A new consortium.
Getting kind of silly now, huh?
What's that?
Getting kind of silly now.
Yeah, it is. A new consortium launched in the Africa Renewable Energy Manufacturing Initiative, which is set up to help drive the financial, technical, and socioeconomic investments needed to develop 1.2 terawatts of energy potential and 14 million new jobs in Africa. So
That's a lot of watts.
that's a lot of watts. That's right. That's going to bring electricity to everybody in the continent. At least almost everybody.
Well, Africa's moving into the 21st century pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the United States is getting involved in the whole action a little belatedly, in my opinion. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, that's
Okay. Clean
nice picture of a Candela boat.
We have a Candela boat. There's the boat.
This is from Clean Technical, and the title says, Candela C8 electric boat gets larger battery and range increase.
That's right. The Candela C8 now has the Polestar 2 69 kilowatt hour battery rather than the 44 kilowatt hour battery it previously came with.
That's 50% increase.
That's a big increase. With a new, larger battery, the C8's range is up to 65 miles, traveling at 22 knots. 22 knots is not slow for a boat. Previously, it was 50 miles. The price of the boat is unchanged.
That's interesting. So you get more for your money.
You are. Now, what they did was they started using a pre-developed battery that was a standard thing going into a standard car.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, they're making out on that. By the way, you were on Sumner class destroyer, weren't you, Tom?
I think it was a Sumner, yeah.
Yeah, my father was on a Fletcher, which was a.
Yeah, Fletcher preceded the Sumner, I think.
That's right, and they were very similar ships, but either of those would go 7 knots faster than this thing. So this thing is not a speedboat; it's a range boat. It can go a long ways, and the boat.
Interesting looking boat sitting there on those
foils.
underwater.
Yeah, it's like there are wings underwater that this thing rides on.
Wings, yep.
Okay, should we go on?
Yes.
Okay, we have another picture, and this picture
Would you believe it's a vineyard?
it's a vineyard, that's right.
It comes from the BBC.
It comes from the BBC. And what do you have for a title?
California storms were great for wine.
Who would have thought of that? The atmospheric rivers that swept through California for 2 weeks caused an estimated $30 billion in damage. By the way, you can chalk a lot of that up to climate change. The torrents,
sure.
yeah, the torrents collapsed hillsides, uprooted trees, and washed out highways. At least 20 people died. It's up from that, and millions were under flood warnings. But the rain was a desperately needed gift to the California wineries, and there is no joke about that.
Well, there's a proverb that applies right now. 'Tis an ill wind that bloweth no good.
Oh dear, that's right. It's kind of like there's a silver lining. I didn't understand that saying when I was a kid. It's an ill wind that blows no good. I didn't understand that, and of course, what it means is the wind can be nasty, but there's usually something to it that is good.
The silver lining.
That's the silver lining in the cloud. Okay, we're up to Saturday, January 21st, and we have
This is an interesting picture, a floating offshore wind turbine.
Yes, indeed it is.
But that's for use where you can't reach the ocean floor quick enough, so you got to have them float.
That's right. And what they did with this thing was they built one base that holds 2 turbines.
Makes sense to me.
It does. I have a feeling that they're not going to be able to build the really, really big turbines like the 15 megawatt turbines that we're seeing coming along into the market for offshore wind power. But, they need to be able to put these things up in places like off the coast of California. And by the way, off the coast of Italy, which is what this is about.
Yeah.
What do you have for a title?
Italy orders 7,100 megawatts of weird floating offshore wind energy harvesters.
Right. The floating wind field is a relatively new one, but Italy has just put in for an ambitious order of 7,100 megawatts, which is 7.1 gigawatts, from a new joint venture anchored by the startup Hexacon, which is marketing a floating wind platform that supports 2 turbines instead of 1. You got any?
Money.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, they're going to be putting up wind turbines. They're starting to put them up virtually everywhere.
Yeah, they are.
And it's a good thing because it means they're going to stop burning fossil fuels, which is wrecking the climate.
Well, it's wrecking the climate. And I think that anybody who doesn't understand that should kind of think about one thing, and that is, Tom, our generation and the generation that follows it, and possibly the generation that follows that, are going to be probably the most cursed people in the history of the world, because we have been so reluctant to stop relying on things that are easy. And
well, it's basically greed.
I believe you're right. And of course, the big thing there is that the big thing is that the greed has caused propaganda to be put out about fossil fuels, about climate change, about wind turbines, solar panels, all kinds of things. And the propaganda says, don't change over. Well, of course, the propaganda is paid for by fossil fuels industries, and they will be held accountable for that at some point.
Well, something is on the horizon now, and it's going to change things. And I'll sort of misquote Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
It's the economy, stupid.
I think that was Hillary, wasn't it?
I think she used it too, but I think it was
he sure did. Yeah. Okay. Our next item is from Clean Technica also, and we have a picture of an all-electric fire truck from Vector. And what you see in the background, when I first saw that, I thought, what is that, a concrete wall? No, it's not a concrete wall.
Those a stadium or something.
It's a stands in a place where people can sit down. That's,
Oh, this is a car racing venue.
That's right. That's what it is.
Daytona racetrack.
This is Daytona Racetrack, and that's where people can sit down. What do you got for a title for the article?
An EV heads to Daytona, but it's heavier than any car that's ever raced there. Well, that's kind of silly.
Yeah, it's kind of silly. A small fleet of EVs will be serving every race at Daytona going forward. The REV Fire Group Incorporated, which makes firefighting apparatus, announced that starting this year, its all-electric Vector fire truck will be part of the firefighting fleet at Daytona International Speedway.
Well, that's true. I'm sure it is. It's interesting because I live right next to the firehouse.
Yes.
And they got a fire truck. It's a different color. It looks exactly like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's a pumper.
It's a pumper.
Yep.
Okay.
And the back of it is where they keep the hoses.
Right. Right.
So that carries men hoses and a pump.
Men hoses and a pump. Okay.
And they got another vehicle that carries the huge ladder.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I always thought of the fire truck as being a pumping truck with a ladder. And of course,
some of them were, I'm sure.
Some of them were, but you know.
Basically, the fire trucks were used to pump. That was their principle.
Yeah. There were also fire trucks that carried water.
Oh, yeah.
I remember a guy I knew not very closely, but his garage burned down, and he said the fire truck showed up and it only had 500 gallons of water in it, which was not enough to put the fire out. So the truck had to leave while the fire was burning, get more water, and come back.
Oh, that sounds pretty inefficient to me.
Well, Tom, when we were kids, things were a little more primitive than they are today.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go to the next picture unless you want to...
No, let's move right along.
Okay, we have a picture of Lake Tahoe in the background.
That's a nice picture. Lake Tahoe's a nice lake.
Have you ever skied there?
No.
Ah, well, I haven't either. In fact, here I am. I'm living in Vermont. I've been in New England much of my life, and I've only gone skiing once.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I was hooked on ice.
I believe you. And there's a lot of people who are, and I can't blame them. But I was
a professional. I was an instructor.
Yeah, I know you were. This is from KUER, which is obviously a radio station or a TV station or something.
Yes, it's a radio and or TV station somewhere.
Okay.
And I'll mention a little bit about Lake Tahoe.
Okay.
The sixth largest lake in the U.S.
Really?
After the Great Lakes.
Huh. How imagine
At 6,000 feet elevation, it straddles the border between California and Nevada near Reno.
Right in the middle of the drought zone. I wonder how it's suffered.
Interesting.
Yeah. What do you have?
It's a big lake.
Yeah. What do you have for title?
This winter's rain and snow won't be enough to pull the West out of drought.
Yeah, the West has been slammed by rain and snow. Quote, "It's great to see a big snowpack," end quote, said Brad Udall, a water and climate researcher at Colorado State University. Quote, "We would need 5 or 6 years at 150% snowpack to fill these reservoirs." And
that's not good news. I mean, we had a lot of rain in California, and it hasn't solved the problem.
Right, and that is extremely unlikely, end quote. The problem that we've got here is this rain comes, it runs straight down to the sea. It does stop where you've got dams and things and fills up the reservoirs. You can only build so many dams. And on the other hand, there are other ways of stopping the runoff of the water, one of which is called a swale. You know what a swale is?
Exactly. I was searching for that word.
Aha, you know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you're going to explain it to the other people.
Well, a swale is basically a ditch that runs across the side of a mountain or a hill.
Sideways.
And it is at level the whole way. So as water comes down the hill, it gets caught into the ditch. And the only thing... It's just there to stop the water from flowing off.
Yeah, it gets captured.
And there's
Which is a good thing. They can save the water instead of it running down.
That's right. And because it's stopped there, it seeps into the ground, which raises the groundwater level. And that's an important issue. Having a lot of rain coming down is not going to raise the groundwater level.
That's a good thing, but it's not enough.
That's exactly right. Okay, I'm going to go on unless you've got more to say about this.
Well, let's move on. It's coming up. It's Sunday, January 22nd.
22nd.
Yeah, we got a picture of a funny-looking car.
This is an Aptera. Aptera, by the way, is from a Greek word, ptera, which means wing, and the A at the beginning is a prefix that means without. And this is called an Aptera because it looks like an airplane without a wing.
Well, that picture was kind of confusing to me because where the front wheels are.
Yeah.
It looks like a car window or something sitting there.
Yeah. Well,
actually, what it is fenders because the wheels are outboard on that car.
They are, and the designers want to have as aerodynamically efficient covering over the wheels as they can possibly have.
Exactly. It's quite a car, actually.
It actually is, yes. What do you have for a title?
Aptera reveals Launch Edition's EV.
Aptera held a live online event where the company revealed the Launch Edition version of its three-wheeled solar-powered car. There are some really cool things about the final design, but also some downsides early adopters will face. You can see the event for yourself or read a recap and commentary. This is from Clean Technica. Now,
interesting point here. The Aptera is technically not classified as a car; it's a motorcycle.
That's right, but you don't have to have.
It's only required that you have a regular driver's license to drive it.
That's right, because the cab is fully enclosed. Now,
unfortunately, I think Massachusetts isn't one of those states.
Oh well, you know what can you say? The thing the downside on this car that they mentioned in the synopsis here is that they didn't put on a fast DC charger system on the car because they want to get it to market quickly. And there was so much pushback on the fact that this fast DC charger system was not included that within a couple of days, Aptera said, okay, we're gonna slightly reschedule the release, and it is going to include a fast DC charger. Now,
oh, that's interesting because they got PV modules on the car.
Yes.
So basically, while it's parked, if you're parking it in the sun, it's getting charged.
It's getting charged at a rate in Vermont. It would be 27 miles a day that it gains by being in the sun on average days, and.
Well, it says it requires, because of the onboard modules, it requires no charging for most daily use.
That's correct. If you were going to use this to commute to a place that's just a few miles away, or stuff like that, you could go a year without needing to charge it. The other thing too is if you have the highest price Aptera, which is still less than $50,000. It has 1,000-mile range. So if you felt like driving
to... That's pretty good range.
That's incredible range. If you felt like driving to Chicago, you could just drive to Chicago if the thing has been charged before you leave. Of course...
Well, they're making these things in the United States. The factory's in San Diego.
Yeah.
But you could better believe they're bringing in a lot of sub-assemblies from Mexico.
Oh, they might not. These new rules that they've got for the Inflation Reduction Act requires that as much as possible of the vehicle be made in the United States. So I don't know what's going to...
That's interesting.
Oh yeah, this is a big deal. The Inflation Reduction Act incentives are not easy reading, and the vehicle manufacturers have to figure all that out. Okay, I'm going to go to the next item.
Why not?
Why not? And this is a floating city.
Very interesting picture.
It is.
Now, I have seen some cities that aren't floating, but they're built on that same thing. They're ring atolls with a circular area in the center.
Right.
And people living in the outside, what would you call this, a ring.
I don't know.
There are real cities like this existing now.
Yes, that's right. Except they're not floating. They're
not floating.
They're kind of built. This is from Business Insider India, and you have a title, Tom.
This floating city concept could be the answer to climate change.
Okay, this floating city concept could house up to 50,000 people and be powered by 100% renewable energy. The living spaces are all connected by walkways, airways, and waterways. Take a look at its vertical gardens. This article, by the way, when it says take a look at vertical gardens, there are a lot of pictures with this article. And 25 acres of interconnected social spaces. What do you think?
It looks interesting to me. By the way, Brattleboro has 12,000 people, so this place is 4 times as big.
4 times as big, yeah. Should I go on?
Here it is.
Okay.
For what it's worth, an acre is about the size of a football field without the end zones.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Okay, we have a picture of a butterfly, Fender's blue butterfly, and this is from...
I've never seen one of them.
Well, you wouldn't, not in Vermont. They're all in Oregon, as I remember. This is from CNN.
This butterfly was once thought extinct. Now it's off the endangered species list.
Yeah, it's
that's unusual, and it's good news.
It's on the threatened species list, but not the endangered species list. And
so it's stepped up one notch.
Yeah, it has. Fender's blue butterfly has fluttered away from the brink of extinction. The species, once so rare it was thought to be extinct, is no longer considered endangered. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is reclassifying the species from endangered to threatened. And this species only lives in one valley, and my recollection is that it's a valley in Oregon. I might be wrong.
So?
Yeah, I might be wrong. By the way, the same day this story appeared, there was another story about, and it was also at CNN, but I didn't include, it's at the blog, but I didn't include it in the show because they both happened the same day. They're similar stories. And this had a better picture. The other one was about porpoises where was it? It was in New York City. I think it was in the East River. And the porpoises had gone there because there were fish there, and this was considered to be a big, big success thing environmentally.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't it? Okay, we're up to Monday, January 23rd, and I have a picture.
A picture of some money.
Money from different places. Actually, maybe it's not from different places. Maybe it's all euros. Let me put it up. It looks like it's all euro-denominated paper money.
Yep.
And this is from Clean Technica.
How the world's largest banks are funding fossil fuel companies.
Yeah.
Now, that's not good news.
No, it's not. And there's a lot of people who are very upset about this. There's no way to sugarcoat this. The world's largest banks are providing money fossil fuel companies need so they can continue degrading the environment to the point where humans may no longer be able to survive on our little blue planet. Now, we could ask, what is that money going to be used for if there's nobody around to sell you things?
That's just what I was thinking.
Yeah. So what do you do? Well, there were a lot of articles about this particular issue.
Well, I think some of the largest banks are starting to turn around and look at this.
You know, they have been for years. They're doing it very slowly, though. Yeah, the big banks, yeah, you're right. They're starting to look at it. They should look...
These are good investments.
They're not good investments. It's going to be stranded assets. And it's...
What the fossil fuel companies are not good investments.
No, they're not.
But the renewables are.
Yeah, Fossil fuel companies are going to be stranded assets.
There you go.
If you went to a bank and you said, I want to buy that house, and we know for a fact that it is going to be declared unlivable in 5 years, try to buy get a loan for a bank to buy the house. It's not going to happen.
It ain't going to happen, no.
And that's what these things are. The banks should be looking at this and saying, yeah, they've got gas reserves. The gas reserves are worth billions of dollars. They just want to borrow a few $1 billion to tap them. The problem is the gas reserves are not worth billions of dollars because very soon the gas won't be saleable. Okay.
Well, a lot of the gas that they were counting on is inaccessible.
Yeah.
It's there, but they can't get it.
Yeah. Okay. Our next item is from BBC, and it's about.
There's a nice picture of Mary Grandstrom.
That's right.
And she's in a lab.
She's in a lab, and if you get other pictures of Mary Grandstrom, they look very much like the same person.
Well, let me quote, algae that blights our seas is harvested to make useful products.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good idea.
Well, I think so. Excess outbreaks of seaweed. Now, seaweed covers a lot more than the...
A lot of different things.
Yeah, a lot of different things. Are clogging up waterways from the Caribbean to the Baltic. Now the algae is being harvested alongside farmed crops to create ingredients for cosmetics and food products.
Not to mention that cows can eat them.
That who can eat them?
Cows.
Cows, that's correct. The outbreaks happen when tiny cyanobacteria suddenly multiply rapidly. Cows don't eat this cyanobacteria. Not the ones that cause the problems that people are familiar with. Now,
no, but they will eat seaweed.
Yeah, they will eat certain kinds of seaweed, which, by the way, reduces the amount of methane that they burp up by as much as 80%, just having a small amount of it.
Is that so?
It is so, I think we will be talking about that. The other thing is there are types of cyanobacteria that people do eat. But the stuff that forms the blooms that come up in Lake Champlain are pretty poisonous in general. Okay, we have an item from the Weather Channel.
Yeah, you got a nice picture of some mountains there and a little cabin in the woods.
Yeah, and look at the roof of that cabin. That looks like slate, but it looks like it's made up of slate that's about 5 times as thick as any slate that you see on roofs around here.
Well, it's not around here.
It's what?
It's not around here.
It's not around here. No, that is in Himachal Pradesh.
Which I think is India.
It's India. I just don't remember exactly where Himachal Pradesh is, but it's obviously in the mountains.
Well, this is something we got from the Weather Channel.
That's right.
And it says, and I quote, climate scientists worry as sun tourism catches up fast in Himachal Pradesh.
Right.
Which, as you said, is part of India.
Yeah. Sun tourism is catching up fast in the Indian mountains of Himachal Pradesh as one gets more balmy days in the winter compared to the country's northern plains.
That's analogous to going to Florida for the winter.
Yeah, sort of, except they're going to a cooler place instead of a hotter place. People have been going to cooler places in the mountains in India since the 19th century or earlier. The fog is screening out the sun, and that's what bothers people who are going to this place. It is a worrying sign for climate scientists. They don't like this. There's a change underway, and the change is progressing. So climate scientists are upset about it. Okay, the next...
Moving right along.
Yeah.
Tuesday, January 24th, coming right up.
That's right, and we have an item here from the Guardian and a picture of a wind farm.
Picture of a wind farm. Pretty good sized wind farm,
It
too.
is indeed, yeah.
No miracles needed. Quote, or quote, I should say, Professor Mark Jacobson on how wind, sun, and water can power the world.
Now,
Who'd have thunk?
who'd have thunk? Let me read the synopsis. Quote, combustion is the problem when you're
Say that again.
combustion is the problem. When you're continuing to burn something, that's not solving the problem, end quote. That's a quote from Professor Mark Jacobson. The world can rapidly get 100% of its energy from renewable resources with, as the title of his new book says, no miracles needed. And by the way, Professor Jacobson is a professor at Stanford, and he has been publishing on this subject for years and years, and he has been consistently saying, we do not need anything but renewable energy. We don't need coal, we don't need gas, we don't need nuclear, we don't even need wood, really, if we want to get strict about it.
Well, oil was a big thing over 100 years ago. Look at the Rockefellers.
Yes, that's right.
John D, as a matter of fact. And these guys were nasty guys.
Yeah, I suppose that they have that reputation, don't they?
They weren't what you would call nice businessmen.
Well, I've known people who were in that family.
Oh, yeah?
Not everybody in the Rockefeller family was wealthy. And I can tell you that. Yeah. Okay. We should go to a new item from the BBC. This is a picture of a harbor at Mutriku. And Mutriku sounds like it could be Japanese or something, but in fact it's in Spain. And
that's what the title says, and I'm just about to read that.
And the name of the harbor is not in Spanish, it's Basque, which is why it sounds so outlandish.
Oh.
What do you have for title?
Well, the Spanish town powered by waves.
Mutriku is called, quote, one of the best preserved medieval towns in the Basque country, end quote. It was built as a fishing village. Its harbor breakwaters, which you can see in this picture, protect it from the effects of constant waves. In 2011, it installed the Mutriku Wave Energy Plant, the first commercial wave power plant in Europe. And the article is basically saying that plant is actually generating quite a lot of power and putting it on the grid for the people in this village.
That's exactly what they're doing. We took a look at a wave energy plant a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting thing. I mean, it kind of wiggles up and down like a snake.
Right. There are a bunch of different ways to do this. Another one is kind of like when the waves come in close to shore. You know, they're much taller than they are when they're out to sea.
Yeah, right.
And they have floaters that look like gigantic hammers that move up and down because the waves go by, and that.
There's a lot of energy in waves.
Oh man, I saw waves break apart a seawall. And that was during I think it was during Hurricane Bob, but it might have been during the perfect storm. I was living down by Plymouth, Massachusetts, and this was not open sea. This was waves in Plymouth Bay. So they were much smaller than open sea. But after a day of those waves, the stones in the seawall, which were, I would guess they must have weighed several tons each, had been washed out to sea.
Wow.
You know, and the waves were breaking against the seawall, and they would go up over 3 stories in the air. And then they'd get picked up by the wind and blown over the top of the building that was right there and come down on cars in a parking lot. And it's like, I wonder what happened to those cars. You know, I mean, salt water is not good for a vehicle. Okay, we have a picture of the Tar Desert, and I'm going to put that up, whoops. This happens so often. We get reminded to reload some kind of thing. Okay, this is from Business Today, and let me.
And it says, I quote, India can save $19.5 billion per year by shifting from coal to clean power.
Yes, India can save up to $19.5 billion a year if it goes with its plan to add 76 gigawatts of utility-scale solar and wind power by 2025. This is according to research from Global Energy Monitor. The report ranked India in the top 7 world countries for prospective renewable energy. Tom, why don't we go and promote renewable energy in India and just tell them, if you do this, you can save $19.5 billion a year, and all we want is 10% of the first year's savings.
That's a sweet idea, isn't
We
it?
could split it between us.
Why
Yeah.
don't we take a trip to India and see what it looks like?
I've never been to India. My brother went to India, and he said, George, you would love India.
I've been to India. It's a nice place.
Oh, yeah. And he said that to me, and then he looked at me for a second, and he said, no, on second thought, you wouldn't like India.
Well, India's a big place, and it's very different from one side to another.
Yes, and it also has big crowds if you want to get around. And the crowds are not what I would like. Okay, we have a picture of alpine skiing.
So we do.
Yeah.
How climate change threatens to close ski resorts. Wow.
Yes. And this is not a small thing. This is from the BBC. You think
This is a world-class ski area.
Yeah. On Christmas and New Year's, Northwest Switzerland hit a record 20.9 degrees Celsius, which is 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm weather throughout the Alps, it was the whole Alpine
That's
area.
hot for Christmas.
What's that?
That's hot for Christmas.
Hot for Christmas. Oh, man. Throughout the Alps is an omen of what awaits the ski industry. Many resorts are aware that they only have 2 options, either close or adapt their business model to cope with mounting climate threats. And
Snowboarding, skiboarding, or what am I trying to say? Skateboarding instead of skiing.
I wouldn't want to skateboard down that slope.
I don't think so.
I have never been on a skateboard.
Nor have I.
But you know, that again is a sign of the time that we grew up in. Skateboards appeared when I was in high school. I mean, they just didn't exist before that. I remember when the town government in one of the towns near where I lived in New Jersey at that time banned skateboards altogether from the town because 2 people had fallen and broken their arms. And they were absolutely, they were so happy because the local high school won had a winning record in football. And you know, if you look at the his football and football injuries, and then skateboard and skateboard injuries, I think skateboarding is a whole lot safer.
I would think.
Okay, should we go on, or do you have more on that one?
As well, can't do it.
Okay.
And a picture of the dairy herd.
We have a picture of a dairy herd. I had to look for quite a while to find this picture of the dairy herd. I really like this particular picture, which happens to be in the Netherlands. And we have an item. This item is from CNN.
Bill Gates backs startup tackling cowbirds.
Amazing. Billionaire Bill Gates has announced an investment in Australian startup Rumin8. That is R-U-M-I-N and the numeral 8.
Ruminate.
Huh?
Ruminate.
Rumin8, that's right, which is developing a seaweed-based feed, see, we're back to that, to reduce methane emissions from cattle. Nearly a third of global methane emissions come from livestock, and most of that is from beef and dairy cattle. Now,
You don't hear much about that, you know?
I see it a lot in the news, and in fact, I've written about it. First of all, I don't believe that it's nearly a third, because half of the methane emissions, or close to it, are leaks in the pipelines and in the wells. So
Okay.
I don't believe.
Not to mention transportation.
Oh, it's crazy. And then The other thing is, if you look at this article, what they're saying is that the rumen 8 is not actually feeding the cattle seaweed. What they're doing is they're saying we don't want to harvest all that seaweed. We want to make a product that will be the same thing but synthetic. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. But when they're talking about harvesting seaweed, I think the synthetic product might be better than messing around with the ocean. Nevertheless, they're claiming that using their product, methane emissions from cattle can be reduced by 95%. And that means...
That's significant.
Huh?
That is very significant.
Very significant. It means that instead of being what this article says is 33%, it would be reduced to about 1.7%. And that would be a huge reduction. So if I had money and wanted to gamble the way Bill Gates does, I would gamble on this before I'd gamble on nuclear power, which is he's also gambling on. By the way, Bill Gates, truth be told, he's said this himself. He has talked about the amount of money that he has lost investing in various ways on the market.
Well, I don't think they've really figured out how to make money on nuclear power.
The only way you can make money on nuclear power is to tax everybody and use that for income.
That's about it.
Really, I mean, if you look at NextEra, they own 7 nuclear power plants, and they say, yeah, okay, so small modular reactors are coming, we're not going to buy them. They said they are not building any more nuclear plants, no more coal plants, no more gas plants, and everything they're doing basically is going to be solar power, wind power.
Or renewable, huh?
All renewable and batteries. That's what it is. And you know,
Well, in a few more years, they're not going to be very many. They're going to look back and say, they used to pay for fuel in those days.
Yes, that's right. They're going to do that. And they're also going to be saying, in those days, they used to burn stuff and just let the smoke go into the atmosphere. And you know, today, it said, and we will talk about this next week, I believe, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, said that it was going to close, I think it was 6 large coal-burning power plants unless they could come up with a plan for what to do with their ash, coal ash, which could be putting it into lined ponds. But right now they're putting it into ponds that are not lined. And, you know...
That's nice.
What's that?
That's nice, so it soaks right into the ground.
Well, not only that, but there's always problems with these unlined ponds. You know, the dams that separate them from a stream or a river occasionally break, and basically you've killed every fish in the river.
Yeah.
And you know, these chemical ponds, people don't usually think about chemical ponds. I've seen...
Well, when you burn things, you got ashes. You got to do something with those ashes.
That's right. You've got to do something. There are things you can do with them that are valuable. I mean, there's value in the ash if you could just figure out how to extract it. But birds occasionally land in those ponds, seabirds, ducks, water birds, and they get into them and are just within a minute, in some cases, they're dead because of fumes coming off. I saw that in chemical pond when I was young. The birds would land and they didn't know that the pond was full of ammonia.
Wow.
Yeah. If they had smelled it before they landed, they would have gone someplace else. But it looks good, you know. And that's the way it is with some things. I don't know why it is, but there are chemicals, oxalic acid. I've worked with oxalic acid, and somehow sulfuric acid, you look at it and you say, wow, that stuff looks disgusting. It looks like water, except that the diffraction index is all wrong. So it looks like it's actually oil. And it's called, It's, they used to have a term for it that was oil. Oil of vitriol was what it was called.
Okay, I've heard that word.
Oxalic acid somehow just looks like the most delightful spring water you've ever seen. You don't want to drink that stuff. You're not going to get it down because it would just burn you like mad. But it just
looks like water.
Yeah, and these ponds, even though they're full of toxic stuff,
They look clean.
yeah. Okay, our last picture, our last story. Here's a picture of a beaver.
Looks like a beaver to me.
Yep, Yale Climate
They're fun to
Connections.
watch, you know?
What's that?
Beavers are fun to watch.
Yes, they are. They are. And, you know, what do you have for a title?
People building artificial beaver dams in drought-stricken Montana.
Who'd have thunk? In southwest Montana, landowners, volunteers, and others are wading into streams to create artificial beaver dams. The dams slow the water runoff. We were talking about this
We
earlier.
talked about that earlier.
Which is quicker now with climate change bringing rain rather than snow. When it snows in a place like Montana, the snow just sits there on the ground. And it doesn't melt very fast, but it melts a little bit, and the water just seeps into the soil.
I was just going to say, some of it gets seeped into the soil instead of running away.
There is a saying, year of snow, year of plenty. And so what they're hoping is that these dams will attract more beavers, and the beavers are spread out. And, you know, if you restore the beavers to that part of the world, you've restored a lot of the water into the water table in drought-stricken areas. So that's what they're looking to do.
Well, it's an improvement.
I think it is, Tom. I think it is. And now we have nothing to say except our last message, which is, we will tell everybody, have a remarkably satisfying week.
Or as they say down south, you all come back and see us now, you hear?
Now, I happen to know, Tom, I've said this every time we close the show. I happen to know, Tom, I know that Tom is waving goodbye just like I am. Is that true,
Absolutely.
Tom? There you go.
And
So,
my cat's waving goodbye, too.
what's that?
My cat's waving goodbye, too.
I absolutely believe you. Is he waving goodbye with one paw or with all four, maybe?
No, he's using his tail.
He's using his tail. Well, come back next week. Bye-bye.
His tail looks like the handle of an umbrella.
Waving. Okay.